Ever tried checking in for a flight only for the system to freeze? Or had a call drop at the worst moment? Now let's up the stakes. Imagine a power grid failing during peak demand. Cyber attacks grab headlines, but failures don't always come from outside. The real threat? Fragility inside our systems. That's what happened to Optus, a telecom provider in Australia. One bad configuration, one cascading failure, entire nations can grind to a halt. No hacker necessary. Reliability engineering can solve these problems. It can keep systems fast, available, and cost-effective. But despite its benefits, it's underutilized in many organizations. Why is this? My research found that the challenge isn't just technical, it's structural. I dug deeper and interviewed experts in reliability engineering to learn more. Their insights will be shared throughout this video. In the next 10 minutes, we'll examine the unseen roadblocks to making reliability stick, how to bridge the gap between engineering and business priorities, why reliability efforts stall, and how to fix them. Before we go further, let's take a step back. Where did reliability engineering come from? It's not a new concept, having supported software systems since the 1960s. As companies scaled to the cloud, it took on a more modern form. In 2003, Google pioneered an updated version called Site Reliability Engineering, or SRE for short, to handle millions of daily searches across its distributed systems. Today, it's the standard at companies like Meta, Netflix, and others. But now, critical industries like telecoms, banking, energy, transportation, and healthcare are fast realizing they need it too. These industries, however, face a challenge that big tech doesn't. Legacy IT culture stands in their way.
How do we create software now versus how we have created software 5 or 10 years ago? In my role as a director of reliability engineering, I talk a lot about the impact, the cultural and organizational impact of the changes that we are driving. Just because I'm explaining to you the change that I'm interested in introducing once doesn't mean that I have your immediate buy-in or that it was immediately successful convincing you that this is the right thing to do and the right thing to prioritize.
Sebastian's experience is a familiar struggle. Change isn't about adding new tools or processes. It's about shifting the way we think and operate. Meet John Carter, a leading expert in organizational change. His 8-step model covers the full process of change, but 3 factors stand out: aligning leadership to drive action, communicating a shared vision to sustain buy-in, and reinforcing progress to embed lasting change. Reliability will not improve just by adding better tools. It demands developing new capabilities and shifting mindsets. It's not just an internal challenge at just a few companies. It's an industry-wide struggle. But what does this struggle look like on the ground level?
The change that SREs tend to surface, tend to talk about more than anybody else, is difficult sometimes to convey. It's challenging to interrupt the software engineering practitioners in their flow and in their pressure situations to deliver those features and functions. And the pressure for a reliability engineer is, help us stabilize the system, make it more performant, help us to overcome these reliability challenges. Those two things don't seem to go hand in hand. And if you're reading industry reports, they seem to confirm that. It's that tension where everybody wants to improve the technology system, and I include the software engineers, the product engineers, and the test engineers there as well, but their incentive structure is different. The drivers are different for those different practitioners.
This tension isn't just anecdotal. It shows up in research on how software teams treat operational aspects like reliability. In 2021, Google's DevOps research program stated reliability as the 5th metric of software delivery. It found that teams excelling at operational practices were 40% more likely to deliver software effectively and 80% more likely to achieve better business outcomes. But still today, not all teams see reliability as an enabler. A more recent industry report revealed that 41% of engineers feel pressured to ship fast rather than balance for stability. Research confirms that under delivery pressure, teams prioritize what gets measured, often at the expense of domain-specific expertise like reliability. This isn't just a technical issue. It's an example of misaligned incentives. When teams chase speed in isolation, they don't just move fast, they risk breaking the system. Team-level optimizations may offer short-term gains, but they often create unseen fragility that weakens system stability. When organizations exclusively reward speed over reliability, failure isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Reliability engineers then face the challenge of competing against other priorities.
When you bring in a reliability practitioner, like their job is to care about reliability or about SRE or whatever it is, right? And they will care about it to the extent permitted. They'll try to put in place SLOs and they'll try to have those SLOs be meaningful, and they'll work to, build resiliency into how you build software, even if the company doesn't want to. And that's an awkward conversation generally, because generally when you ask the leadership of a company how much do you care about reliability, the correct answer is a lot, right? Even though day to day the correct answer is a normal amount or a sensible amount based off of our attitude to risk. It can be a bit double-speaky, and it's easy to get yourself lost in that conversation.
So you see, the struggle on the ground is real. The training and workshops can help align teams on reliability, transforming it from an afterthought into a shared responsibility. But there is one thing. Organizations make one critical mistake with this effort.
They make this mistake. They just bring a cohort of people who have the similar skills and they say, well, let's do SRE. You're not going to get any value by just doing with the same cohort. You bring in cross-functional teams, they ask the right questions, it makes you integrate in some of those ways and then start figuring it out, what else can I do to bring in that different perspectives, because the ability to challenge the status quo, ability to understand different ways of working, ability to ask the right questions are so important in a training. So I call it as a facilitation session, right? You're not in a school or a class where we're just trying to parrot out what Google's SRE book is talking about. You're trying to get to an understanding of what does it mean for us in our own organizations? What does SRE mean? Contextualizing the learning to an actual practice is where I think the real power is.
Research shows that when multiple disciplines learn together, they solve problems faster and build stronger systems. Instead of working in isolation, they challenge each other's assumptions, ask the right questions, and break down silos that slow progress. Cross-functional training isn't just a nice to have. Imagine product engineers, infrastructure teams, and operations people all in the same room. But it's not just about developing new technical skills. It's about developing a shared mindset, where reliability is part of everybody's job, where teams aren't just reacting to failures, but designing resilience from the start. But without leadership buy-in, none of this will stick. When reliability is just a technical issue, it gets sidelined in business decisions. But leaders will invest in what drives measurable business impact with the cost of inaction. So how do we connect reliability to their goals?
You're trying to justify your existence day to day when in actual fact your value proposition is a big macroeconomic thing that the company has made an investment in. It's something that even at Google we kind of struggle with, because it'll be true in most places that SRE is a cost center, right? It doesn't, in terms of how you account for it in the business, it's just a cost. You might say nice things about your product story where you say like, oh, reliability is part of our product story and there's an incremental benefit in our products being reliable. But then when you ask people to say, can you put that on the balance sheet as a net positive in terms of revenue, they're like, oh, no, SRE is a cost center. But then when you apply that at the organizational level and you're saying like, okay, how reliable is reliable enough? How much investment is enough, such that we're happy that we've made the right amount of investment and we're not just growing without bound within how we do this.
Leaders will support reliability if it aligns with their existing priorities, but many lack even a high-level understanding of what it is. Without that foundation, buy-in rarely goes beyond lip service.
If the leadership team by themselves don't even understand SRE and then saying, I have a bunch of folks, I want you to train on SRE, it doesn't help at all. So I believe that you have to start with the leadership at the top. So I have an executive briefing that I do on SRE to get them on board. They understand what's the cost of downtime, what's the level of resources that you require, and why do we need to have that, and then go into how we get everybody onto the same page, right? So common definition of SRE across the entire organization is going to be important. One of the time that I did an executive brief for US client on site reliability engineering, the leader said, "This is awesome. I never knew that SRE had this potential, but I don't have money and resources to invest on SRE." And I asked them, I flipped over the question and asked them, what's the cost of your downtime? On an average, an hour is about $150,000. So I said, so what if I give you, if I get two resources at $300,000, and if I vouch for that, there will be no downtime again? Will that make sense? Because the cost of your downtime towards the one. And I got that two FTEs approved. And it's a question of really articulating what's the business value.
We've now covered 4 key roadblocks to scaling reliability. When trying to bring about change, you'll experience the resistance. It's natural. Reliability competes with short-term business priorities. Teams outside the reliability function will not be so proactive about it. Getting leadership buy-in is tough because it calls for real investment. It's not all doom and gloom. Let's talk solutions. Change will stick when there's buy-in, momentum, and reinforcement. Reliability isn't extra work, it's work done better. So frame it in terms of developer efficiency, not just system stability. Aim to get various teams of different departments to learn about reliability together, because it shouldn't just be an SRE concern. Executives invest in impact, so connect reliability to priorities and metrics that matter to them. So what's the bigger picture here? Reliability doesn't fail because of a lack of technical expertise. There is no shortage of talent within engineers. It does fail when organizations treat it as an afterthought, or it's something to fix later, rather than designing for it from the start. The companies that get it right don't just document best practices, they embed them in teams, in processes, even leadership priorities. Because reliability doesn't scale by accident. It scales by design.